All right, so we've got some seriously interesting papers here on change management.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're all like riffing on these legendary
Oh,
thinkers.
yeah.
Alan Turing,
Okay.
Claude Shannon, and James Clerk Maxwell.
Wow.
It's like a
A pretty impressive lineup.
total brain trust, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating how these papers suggest that, like, we can learn a lot about navigating change in organizations just by looking at ideas from
Yeah.
computation, information theory, and even thermodynamics.
I know, right? Who knew? It's like they're saying, hey, maybe those old school linear change management models, like they just aren't cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
Instead, we can find inspiration in some pretty unexpected places, right?
Exactly. And the common thread running through all of these perspectives
Yeah.
is information.
Okay.
How it flows, how it's managed, and how it shapes the entire dynamics of change within an organization.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. Where do we even begin?
Well, the papers start by laying the groundwork with Alan Turing
Okay.
and his concept of the Turing machine.
You remember that from your
You remember that?
computer science days, right?
Right.
Vaguely
Yeah.
refresh my memory.
Okay. So essentially, a Turing machine is this theoretical model of computation that breaks down these complex processes into a series of like simple rule-based operations.
Okay.
So think of it as a machine that reads symbols on a tape, follows a set of instructions, and then writes new symbols based on those instructions.
Okay.
It's all about simplification.
So it's like taking a massive, complicated problem
Yep.
and like breaking it down into bite-sized, manageable chunks.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the amazing thing about the Turing machine is that despite its simplicity, it can theoretically simulate any computational process.
Wow.
It's a really powerful tool for understanding how complex systems work.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Mm.
So how does this apply to organizational change? Are we supposed to treat our companies like giant Turing machines?
Not literally, of course.
Okay.
But the key takeaway here is the power of a reductionist approach.
Okay.
Just as Turing broke down these complex computations into simpler steps, we can apply a similar mindset to organizational change.
So instead of getting lost in the weeds of like every single detail of a change initiative,
Yeah.
we should try to pinpoint those core information flows that are driving the change.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Identify those essential symbols, the key players, and the rules that govern how they all interact.
Uh-huh.
Once you understand those fundamental elements, you can design interventions that are much more targeted and effective.
It's like decluttering your mental model of the change process.
Yes.
Strip away all the unnecessary noise and focus on the signal.
Exactly.
That's a pretty powerful concept.
It is, and that's where Claude Shannon's information theory comes into play.
Ah, information theory.
Yeah.
I've heard whispers of this. It's all about quantifying information
Yeah.
and its relationship to uncertainty.
Right, I got it. One of Shannon's key contributions was the concept of entropy, which is a measure of uncertainty or randomness in a system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So high entropy equals a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like trying to herd cats.
Uh-huh.
And low entropy means things are more predictable, like a well-oiled machine.
Precisely. And just like physical systems, organizations have a certain capacity for processing information.
Okay.
And when that capacity is exceeded,
Yeah.
boom, you get information overload.
Oh, yeah.
Confusion, stress, and resistance to change are sure to follow.
So effective change management isn't just about blasting out information like a fire hose.
Right.
It's about managing the flow of information to like minimize uncertainty and prevent overload.
Exactly.
You need to find the right pressure setting, so to speak.
That's a great analogy. And this is where the connection to Maxwell's demon might seem like a bit of a leap.
Okay.
But trust me, it's worth exploring.
Maxwell's demon.
Oh.
Okay, you've got my attention.
All right.
What's that all about?
Okay, picture this. A tiny demon controlling a door between two chambers of gas molecules.
Okay.
The demon can selectively allow fast-moving molecules to pass into one chamber and slow-moving molecules into the other. Essentially, it's sorting the molecules.
So it's like the demon is creating order out of chaos
Mm-hmm.
by separating the fast movers from the slow pokes.
Exactly. And at first glance, it seems like the demon is defying the second law of thermodynamics,
No.
which states that entropy always increases in a closed system.
Right.
It's a head-scratcher.
Yeah. Because it's creating more order,
Yeah.
which means less entropy,
Mm.
right? It's like cleaning your room. You're decreasing entropy in your personal space,
Right.
but it takes energy and effort to get it done.
That's a great way to put it. But here's the catch with Maxwell's demon. The demon itself needs information to make those decisions about which molecules to let through.
Mm-hmm.
And processing that information requires energy.
Oh,
It's a trade-off.
so even though the demon is reducing entropy in the gas chambers,
Yeah,
it's increasing entropy somewhere else in the process.
exactly.
It's like shifting the mess from one place to another.
Precisely. And this is where the analogy to organizations gets really interesting. Creating order in one part of an organization often creates disorder elsewhere.
That makes a lot of sense. You streamline a process in one department, and suddenly another department is drowning in work.
Right.
It's like a game of whack-a-mole with entropy.
Exactly. So effective change management requires understanding these trade-offs.
Uh-huh.
You need to consider the resource costs associated with managing information and be prepared for those ripple effects.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly random ideas are actually connected. But how do we translate all of this into action? How do we actually apply these principles in the real world?
That's where the later papers in this collection dive into some concrete applications.
Okay.
They argue that effective change management draws on three key principles: beauty structure and order.
Okay, this one pretty philosophical. How do those translate into real-world change management?
They are, but they also have very practical implications.
Mm-hmm.
Beauty in this context refers to the elegance and simplicity of the change initiative. Are the solutions clear and concise? Do they align with human behavior? In other words, does the change make sense to the people who are actually going through it?
So it's about making the change feel intuitive and natural, not like some clunky forced process.
Exactly. Then you have structure.
Okay.
This is all about creating a clear framework for change. Think about roles, processes, tools, and governance models.
Uh-huh.
It's like having a well-defined roadmap for the change journey,
Yeah.
but one that allows for flexibility and adaptation along the way.
So it's not about rigid adherence to a plan, but about having a framework that can guide us through the inevitable twists and turns.
Exactly. And finally, you have order.
Okay.
This is about reducing uncertainty and ensuring alignment.
Uh-huh.
It's about minimizing confusion, clarifying expectations, and making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction, even when the waters get choppy.
So it's about creating a shared understanding of where we're going and how we're going to get there, even when things get a little chaotic.
You got it. And the papers argue that by embracing these three principles, beauty, structure, and order,
Yeah.
we can move beyond traditional top-down change management models and create something much more adaptive and effective.
Okay, this is starting to click for me. I'm eager to hear how these principles translate into actionable strategies.
Yeah.
What specific steps can we take to put this into practice?
Well, hold on to your hats, because the next set of papers dive into exactly that,
Okay.
offering some really practical insights based on the combined wisdom of Turing, Shannon, and Maxwell.
All right, bring it on. My brain is ready for the deep dive. Let's hear what these brilliant minds have to offer.
So you ready to hear about how to put these principles into practice?
Absolutely. Give me the nitty-gritty. Like, what concrete steps can we take?
Well, they propose a framework with like 6 key steps.
Okay.
Define the system, assess entropy,
Okay.
design interventions, optimize information flow,
Mm-hmm.
balance local global effects, and embrace the energy cost.
Okay.
It sounds like a mouthful, but
Yeah.
each step kind of builds on the last.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one.
Yeah.
What do they mean by define the system?
It's all about understanding the context of the change
Okay.
you're dealing with. Right. You
Yeah.
need to identify the key components of the organization, like the people, the processes, the technologies, the relationships, and like map out how they all interact.
Rough.
Think of it like creating a blueprint.
So it's like taking a snapshot of the organization before you start making any changes.
Yeah.
You need to know where you're starting from before you can figure out where you want to go.
Exactly. You need a clear understanding of the current state before you can effectively plan for the future state.
Makes sense. And then what's next? Assess entropy.
Right. This step is about figuring out the level of uncertainty or disorder in the system.
Okay.
Where are the areas of like ambiguity, confusion, or
Right.
inefficiency?
So you're looking for like the pain points.
Yes,
The areas where things aren't running as smoothly as they could be.
precisely. And you're not just looking for symptoms.
Yeah.
You're trying to dig down and find the root causes of those symptoms.
And I imagine Shannon's concept of entropy would be really helpful here in terms of actually quantifying the level of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
You could use metrics like information flow analysis
Yeah.
or network mapping to identify those high entropy zones.
Absolutely. Those tools can help you prioritize your interventions and focus your energy where it's most needed.
Okay, so once you've identified the areas of high entropy, what's next? How do you actually start tackling the problem?
That's where design interventions comes in.
Okay.
This is where you get to be creative and come up with solutions that address the root causes of the problems that you've identified.
And this is where the principles of beauty, structure, and order come into play again, right?
Yes.
You want to design solutions that are elegant, clear, and aligned with the natural flow of work and human behavior.
Exactly. You're not just looking for a quick fix. You're aiming for something that's both effective and sustainable in the long run.
Right.
You want to create a change that people can actually embrace.
So it's not about slapping on a Band-Aid. It's about designing a solution that fits seamlessly into the organizational fabric.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget Turing's reductionist approach here. Break down the problem into smaller, more manageable pieces, and then design interventions that target those specific pieces.
It's like a divide and conquer strategy for change management.
Yes.
You're breaking down a complex challenge into smaller, more solvable problems.
Exactly. All right, so we've defined the system, assessed entropy,
Right.
and designed our interventions. What's the next step in this framework?
I'm guessing it has something to do with information.
You're right on the money. The next step is optimize information flow.
Yeah.
This is all about ensuring that the right information is reaching the right people at the right time in a way that's clear, concise, and actionable.
So it's about cutting through the noise and making sure the signal is loud and clear, like we talked about earlier with Shannon's work.
Yeah.
It's about minimizing uncertainty and maximizing understanding.
Exactly. You want to reduce redundancy, eliminate jargon, and create feedback loops so people can ask questions and get clarification.
It's like greasing the wheels of communication, making sure information flows smoothly throughout the organization. And I imagine technology can play a big role here, automating some of those flows and making things more efficient.
Absolutely. But remember, technology is just a tool. It's important to use it in a way that supports human communication,
Right.
not replaces it entirely.
That's a good reminder. Technology should enhance our communication, not become a barrier to it. Okay, so we've optimized information flow. What's next on our change management journey?
Now we have to think about the bigger picture. The next step is balance local global effects.
Okay.
Remember our friend Maxwell's demon?
Yes.
Well, this is where he comes back into play.
Right, because any change we make, even a positive one,
Yeah.
is likely to have ripple effects throughout the organization.
Exactly.
What might seem like order in one department could create chaos in another. It's all about those unintended consequences.
Exactly. So you need to think holistically about the potential impacts of your interventions.
Okay.
Will streamlining a process in one department create bottlenecks in another? Will automating a task lead to job displacement? You have to consider the bigger picture.
So it's not just about solving the immediate problem. It's about understanding how that solution might impact other parts of the organization.
Yeah.
It's like playing chess.
Yeah.
You need to think several moves ahead.
That's a great analogy. And one of the best ways to anticipate those unintended consequences is to involve people from different parts of the organization in the change process from the very beginning.
Right.
Get their perspectives, their insights. That way you can identify potential issues early on and adjust your approach as needed.
It's about bringing diverse voices to the table and considering the change from multiple perspectives.
Exactly. Now, are you ready for the final step in this framework?
Bring it on. Let's hear it.
The final step is embrace the energy cost.
Okay.
This one is all about being realistic. Change requires resources, time, effort, money, and emotional energy. You have to be prepared to invest those resources if you want to see lasting change.
So it's about acknowledging that change is hard work.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to require sustained effort and commitment from everyone involved.
Yes.
No pain, no gain.
Well, it doesn't have to be painful.
Right.
But it does require a certain level of commitment. And part of embracing the energy cost is being transparent with people about what's involved. Don't sugarcoat the challenges.
Right.
Be upfront about the effort required and celebrate those milestones along the way. Recognizing progress is a great way to maintain motivation and keep people energized.
That's a really important point. Change fatigue is real, and it can derail even the best laid plans.
Yeah.
You need to find ways to keep people engaged and motivated throughout the process.
You're absolutely right. And that's why this final step is so crucial.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that change isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process that requires sustained effort and a willingness to adapt and adjust as you go.
This framework is giving me a whole new perspective on change management. It's not just about following a checklist, it's about understanding the complex dynamics at play and embracing the messy, iterative nature of change.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that change is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be bumps in the road, unexpected detours,
Yeah.
and moments where you need to recalibrate your course.
Yeah.
But by embracing the principles of beauty structure and order,
Yeah.
and by following these 6 steps, you can navigate those challenges more effectively and create lasting positive change within your organization.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see how these ideas could transform the way organizations approach change. But what about the human element? What about the role of leadership in all of this? How can leaders create the conditions for positive change to emerge?
That's a great question, and it's one that the papers delve into as well. They argue that leadership isn't just about setting a vision and barking orders.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where positive change can flourish organically.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this emergence idea and how leaders can foster it.
Emergence is this fascinating concept. It's
Yeah.
the idea that, like, in complex systems like organizations,
Yeah.
behaviors can arise that you couldn't have predicted just by looking at the individual parts. It's like the whole becoming greater than the sum of its parts.
So it's not about leaders like trying to micromanage every single detail of the change,
Right.
but rather about creating a fertile ground where positive change can like sprout up organically.
That's a great way to put it. And the papers draw some interesting parallels between effective leadership
Okay.
and those principles we discussed earlier.
Right.
Beauty, structure, and order.
Beauty, structure, and order. But how do those principles translate to leadership specifically?
Think of beauty and leadership as like being about clarity, authenticity,
Yeah.
inspiration. It's
Okay.
about communicating in a way that's like clear and concise, but also resonates with people's values. It's about being genuine and passionate about the change you're trying to create.
So it's not just about what leaders say, but how they say it.
Yeah.
It's about walking the walk and talking the talk.
Exactly. People can spot a phony a mile away. Authenticity is key.
Right.
Now, how about structure? In a leadership context, it's about creating a framework that allows people to thrive.
Okay.
Think clear roles and responsibilities, efficient decision-making processes, and systems for feedback and accountability.
So it's about setting clear boundaries,
Yeah,
but giving people the freedom to operate within those boundaries.
exactly.
It's about empowering people to take ownership of the change.
Exactly. It's about striking that balance between control and autonomy. And this is where Turing's concept of modularity becomes relevant. Just as a Turing machine can be built from like simpler modules,
Yeah.
an organization can be structured to allow different teams to operate with some independence while still aligning with the overall goals.
It's like creating a system of like interconnected yet self-governing units.
Yes,
Each unit has its own clear purpose, but they all work together harmoniously.
you got it. Now, what about order?
Go ahead.
In leadership, it's about fostering a shared understanding of the goals, the values,
Yeah.
and the direction of the change.
So it's about minimizing ambiguity
Yes.
and ensuring that everyone's on the same page, rowing in the same direction.
Exactly. And this is where Shannon's concept of reducing entropy comes in again.
Right.
Leaders need to be like masterful communicators, able to convey complex information in a clear, concise, and uncertainty-reducing way.
Yeah.
They need to be able to cut through the noise and deliver a clear signal.
And I imagine that involves not just sending out information, but actively listening to people's concerns, addressing their questions, and making sure everyone feels heard and understood.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Absolutely. It's about creating a dialogue, not just delivering a monologue. So we've got beauty structure and order in leadership.
Okay.
But can you give me a real-world example of how these principles might play out?
Okay, sure. Imagine a company going through a major digital transformation. How might a leader embodying these principles approach that?
Great example. A leader embodying beauty might start by painting a compelling picture of the future.
Okay.
They'd communicate the vision for this transformation in a way that connects with people's values, perhaps talking about how technology can empower employees to do their best work,
Yeah.
create amazing customer experiences, or even make a positive impact on the world.
So it's about getting people excited about the change.
Yes.
Showing them how it aligns with their personal aspirations and the greater good.
Exactly. It's about inspiring people, not just commanding them.
Right.
Now, on the structure side, This leader might create cross-functional teams that are empowered to experiment with different technologies and approaches.
Uh-huh.
They might set clear goals and metrics,
Yeah.
but give those teams the autonomy to figure out how best to achieve those goals. It's about fostering a sense of ownership and innovation.
So it's about creating a framework for experimentation
Yeah.
and learning, not just dictating a rigid plan.
Right.
It's about trusting people to figure things out.
Right. And then in
Mm.
terms of order, this leader would make sure to communicate regularly and transparently about the progress of the transformation.
Okay.
They'd create opportunities for feedback and address concerns promptly.
Uh-huh.
They'd be the steady hand guiding the ship through the storm.
So it's about minimizing uncertainty, keeping everyone informed, and making sure the ship stays on course even when the seas get rough.
Exactly. And by embracing these three leadership principles, beauty, structure, and order,
Yeah.
this leader would be creating the conditions for positive emergence to occur. They'd be setting the stage for innovation, collaboration, and ultimately a successful transformation.
That's a really inspiring vision of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering, how do these principles apply to different types of change? Is there a one-size-fits-all approach?
That's a great question. And the papers acknowledge that the way these principles manifest will vary depending on the nature and scale of the change.
Right.
Leading a small team through a minor process tweak will look different from leading a massive organization through a complete cultural overhaul.
So it's about adapting your leadership style to the context of the change.
Exactly.
A light touch for small changes.
Yeah.
A firmer hand for those seismic shifts.
Exactly. And remember, leadership isn't always about being the person with the fancy title.
Right.
It can emerge from anywhere within the organization.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
It's about empowering everyone to step up and be a leader in their own way, regardless of their formal position.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from these papers.
Yeah.
They challenge us to think of leadership not as a position, but as a set of qualities and behaviors that anyone can embody. It's about inspiring and empowering others to create positive change.
That's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
It's about democratizing leadership
Mm.
and recognizing that everyone has the potential to make a difference.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up, I think there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to address. How do we measure the success of our change initiatives?
You're absolutely right. We've talked about how to approach change management,
Yeah.
how leadership plays a crucial role. But we haven't really discussed how to know if it's all working.
Exactly. How do we know if we're actually making progress and achieving our desired outcomes? What do these papers have to say about measurement and evaluation?
Well, one of the papers dives deep into this very topic,
Right.
and it stresses the importance of using both quantitative and qualitative measures to get a holistic view of the impact of your change efforts.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Numbers can tell us one part of the story,
Right.
but they don't always capture the full picture. We need to understand not just what's happening,
Yeah.
but how people are experiencing the change,
Uh-huh.
what's working well, and where there's room for improvement.
You nailed it. While traditional approaches often fixate on quantitative metrics like adoption rates,
Yeah.
timelines, or budget adherence, this paper encourages us to dig deeper.
So what kind of qualitative measures should we be looking at?
Think about things like employee morale, how clear people feel about new processes, and even gathering stories of how teams have adapted to the changes. It's about understanding the human side of change.
So it's about capturing those nuances,
Yes.
the emotional responses,
Mhm.
unexpected challenges, and the small victories along the way.
Exactly. And it's about gathering both the positive and the negative feedback
Right.
so you can learn and adapt as you go.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
But how do you actually gather this qualitative data? Do you just wander around the office asking people how they feel about the new spreadsheet software?
Well, there are more structured approaches.
Okay.
You can use interviews, focus groups,
Mhm.
surveys, or even observe how people are interacting with new systems or processes.
Right.
It's about being a bit of an anthropologist,
Yeah.
observing the culture of change as it unfolds.
I can see how that would provide some rich insights.
Yeah.
And I imagine technology can play a role here as well,
Yeah.
providing tools for gathering and analyzing feedback.
Absolutely. But again, it's crucial to remember that technology is just a tool. The real value comes from human interpretation and insight.
So we've gathered all this quantitative and qualitative data. Now what? How do we make sense of it all?
The paper suggests a few approaches. One is to use a mixed methods approach,
Okay.
where you combine the quantitative data, which shows you the overall trends, with the qualitative data, which gives you context and explains why those trends are happening.
So it's about using the two types of data to tell a more complete and nuanced story. The numbers give you the skeleton, and the stories put flesh on the bones.
That's a great way to put it. Another approach is to create dashboards or visualizations that display key metrics alongside qualitative summaries or anecdotes.
So you might have a graph showing the adoption rate of a new system next to some quotes from employees about their experiences using that system.
Yeah.
You're getting both the big picture and the human perspective side by side.
Exactly. And finally, the paper encourages the use of storytelling, weaving together the data and human experiences into a compelling narrative that people can connect with and learn from.
It's about making the data come alive,
Yes.
showing how it relates to real people's lives and experiences.
Precisely. And when you can do that effectively, measurement becomes less about evaluation and more about learning and continuous improvement.
Wow.
It's no longer about passing or failing.
Right.
It's about gaining insights that can help you do better next time.
That's such an important shift in mindset. It's about embracing the iterative nature of change, recognizing that we're always learning and evolving.
Exactly. And that mindset is essential for navigating today's rapidly changing world.
This has been an incredible journey. We've explored a whole new way of thinking about change management, inspired by the work of Turing, Shannon, and Maxwell. We've discussed how beauty, structure, and order can guide not just the change process,
Yeah.
but also the qualities of effective leadership.
And we've talked about the importance of considering ethics gathering both quantitative and qualitative data and embracing a mindset of continuous learning and improvement.
This has been a lot to absorb, but I feel like it's given me a whole new toolkit for approaching change, both personally and professionally.
I agree. And I think the key takeaway here is that change isn't something to be feared or avoided.
Right.
It's a natural part of life.
Yeah.
And when approached with the right mindset and tools, it can be a source of incredible growth and opportunity.
So to our listener, we encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed today. Think about how these ideas might apply to your own experiences with change, whether you're leading a team, navigating a personal transition,
Yeah.
or simply trying to make sense of the constant change swirling around us.
And remember, change isn't just something that happens to us. We
Wow.
can be active participants,
Yeah.
shaping the change we want to see in the world.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into change management. Until next time, embrace the change and keep learning.